So you want to save the filthy little beasts, eh? Perhaps you want me to give the animals my car. Do you want me to give my car to the smelly goat?
Goats don't drive, sir.
I don't care what you want me to do. The smelly goat will never get my car. Ever.
But the animals have nowhere to go. Some creep's closing down the shelter.
I'm closing down the shelter, silly boy.
What?
All I need now is the right bulldozer. I'm thinking big and yellow. Where did you think I was going to build Nebworth Stadium? In your house? Ha ha! Your house! That's rich! There wouldn't be room!
Hello, listening people.
Hello.
You're listening to Spin Posh Presents Pictures Powwow. I am one of your hosts, Ryan Swinski.
And I'm the other one, Bartek.
Hello, Bartek, how are you?
Good, Ryan, how are you?
I'm doing very well, although I will say that I am currently charging through this episode on 3.5 hours worth of sleep. So,
About the same? Maybe?
My energy's high.
When I click record, I wake up.
That's when you wake up, yeah. I just could not get to sleep because, I was just so excited that, and my wife was snoring, and it was pouring rain, so I just couldn't sleep. I'm just so excited to talk about movies with you again.
Yeah, I couldn't sleep because I had to do the tragic thing of silencing my wind chimes.
Ah, yes. Bartek's last episode unfortunately forgot to remove his wind chimes, so if you enjoyed Unbreakable discussion with wind chimes in the background, check out our last episode. So, Bartek, we're here doing Pictures Powwow, our weekly show in which we talk about movies that have come highly recommended. Last episode, it was a recommendation from me. The one before that was from you. So that must mean this week we're doing a listening people's recommendation. Am I right?
Yes, the facts lead to that conclusion.
Thanks, Sherlock. And we are doing a listening people's suggestion for a Disney movie called Max Keeble's Big Move from 2001. Bartek,
Wasn't that 2000?
I thought it was 2001. I think it's
no.
2000. I know that the film takes place in 2001. The IMDb trivia really let me know that. We'll talk about that in a sec. But, Bartek, who were the people that suggested that we do this? And are they possibly here as guests?
They might very well be. They are Chatz, a television podcast.
And who?
Hello.
Hello there, Chatz. We are joined by Allen and Magellan from the Chatz, a television podcast. I think you should call it a televisual podcast, guys.
There's definitely a visual and audio element to it. The visual element is that you watch the show, and the audio element is that you listen to the show. I keep accidentally. I do this thing. Hi everyone, it's Chat. We're the Chatz kids. I keep doing this thing where I make really good marketing copy for our show completely on accident, and it keeps working out like that. There was one on like a Chatz episode.
That would be. I'm sorry, but that would be like if Coca-Cola's slogan was, "Hey, we got a drink for you that's sweet and brown,
and it's got cocaine in it." Yeah,
that's it. Like that's just what you expected it to be.
No, because you watch the TV show and you listen to the podcast show. That was the.
Oh, okay.
That was the levels. There.
Okay. Okay.
No, I
got you.
listened to your show just watching the time tick away. Just watching the little
Just look at a clock.
No. Just
Stare at an analog clock.
Now that's a visual.
So, which one's which, just to make clarification? Who's Allen? Who's Magellan?
I'm Magellan.
Anymore. I'm okay. Yep. No, you're not. I'm Magellan. He's Allen. I did on a recent episode introduce myself as Allen, not as a joke, but I literally thought that's who I was. So we've sort of blended over the years.
I was saying to Bartek before we recorded, he was like, "So it's Allen and Magellan, right?" And I'm like, "Magellan." Not Magellan.
Magella Gorilla. That's what I call him sometimes.
I've gotten every flavor of name pronunciation. So
I know. I've got easy common name privilege.
Yeah, Bartek.
Bartek, thank you.
Bartłomiej Kasprzyszak.
Oh yeah.
We have a 3-star iTunes review from America, and one of its complaints was that there's that host Bartek whose name sounds like how it's written down. Like that was what they wrote.
Beautiful. That's the best kind of review.
That was that a critique, or that was the one thing they liked?
No, that was
about
the critique.
Wasn't that a reference to something you said?
It was a reference to what you said about your own name in the episode. You're like,
Okay.
I'm Bartek. It sounds like how it's written down. So, Chatz, what do you do on your television podcast? Obviously, you talk about TV shows, but what's your kind of format and what kind of shows do you talk about? Any on the go currently that you're talking about?
Yeah, so we there are a lot of TV rewatch podcasts out there, and the vast majority of those center the TV show and sort of seek to be like, we are the definitive, I don't know,
Twin Peaks.
whatever show you want to watch. We're the definitive Twin Peaks rewatch podcast, and our approach is that's not really what we're interested in doing. We're just two guys who have been friends for a really long time, and we like watching shows together. So we pick a show, we watch the whole thing 2 episodes at a time. A lot of the time, they're shows that we haven't seen before, but we go through the journey of watching the whole thing together. And folks who've seen it before, or folks who want to watch something for the first time, they generally have fun coming along for the ride with us. So we just finished covering, spending almost 2 years, a year and a half or so, covering Babylon 5 and the assorted media and ephemera. And then now we're currently watching The Prisoner.
Oh.
So,
Yeah.
just for those who may be
it's
interested,
wacky.
what is the Prisoner and why are you covering that currently?
That would be telling.
I can take this one.
Yeah.
So The Prisoner, it's a 1960s mystery drama, comedy drama, actually. And it's about an agent who finds himself he wakes up on a mysterious village somewhere in Europe, and he has to figure out why he's there, what's going on with these weird people on the village, and how to get off. It's a tale as old as time, and it appeals to us because, well, first of all, it has a really good cult fan base. And it's not discussed as much in pop culture today because it's older, and I think a lot of pop culture tends to focus and have a lot of recency bias. So I like that aspect of it, the fact that it's influential, and it's you can see all the seeds of what went on to influence other shows like Lost and a lot of other big mystery shows
Like Babylon 5?
Honestly, yeah. I mean, there are straight up quotes in The Prisoner that I legitimately believe JMS, the creator of Babylon 5, was basing some ideas on. Yeah, and it's a really entertaining watch, and there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. It's really stylish and gorgeous, and yeah, it's kind of got the recipe for all the stuff that we enjoy out of our chat shows.
Yeah, for those who may not be familiar with The Prisoner, it has been referenced in pop culture. I always think of The Simpsons.
Yep.
For you, Bartek, there's that Simpsons episode.
Rover yeah.
Yeah, and he gets taken to the island, and there's a koala with a masquerade mask that gasses them, and lots of stuff. And that was actually the last
Patrick
time.
McGowan's in it.
Patrick McGowan.
Yeah,
That's
he's
the
in
last
it.
time he played that Six, the character from
Mm-hmm.
The Prisoner. So it's kind of weird. Yeah, it's one of those shows that is worth checking out, and then obviously you guys accompanying it as a podcast for maybe people who haven't watched it before, maybe listening to you guys after checking out some episodes and getting okay, this is kind of a companion to that. If people haven't seen, people who have seen it, well, they always get a kick out of people like yourselves who haven't seen it before guessing and theorizing and making assumptions and all that, like I did with Babylon 5. One of the fun facts about Prisoner and Babylon 5, just me to Babylon 5 out there, there's a character in the TV show Babylon 5, Mr. Bester, and one of his big things is he gives a certain type of wave, a tip of the hat kind of wave that is directly lifted from The Prisoner. So that's the kind of thing. So you guys talk about shows. What other kind of shows have you talked about in the past to give people an idea of your catalog?
Oh boy, well this is season 7, so we've been doing it for almost 5 years now, and so we've covered stuff like Farscape, Freaks and Geeks, The Newsroom, Babylon 5 as aforementioned, Pushing Daisies, Avatar: The Last Airbender. We cover all sorts of things, but those are the big ones.
So you guys do have quite a lot of shows in your back catalog. Some newer shows, some older shows. You have an animated show in there like Avatar: The Last Airbender, like you said, which is kind of one of those shows that it's well, that one was one that everyone loved. That's would that be the most mainstream popular show that you guys covered? Would you say?
I think so. That one was also a case of not every chat show has to be obscure. It's more like, does it have is there a conversational angle that we think is interesting and exciting? And like that show, my relationship to it as having watched it and been influenced by it as a kid, and Magellan getting older having never watched it, I think that was like the hook that got me to push
it was
for that
when
one.
we decided to watch Avatar. Part of it was, so I'm a high school teacher, and I had actually had like students of mine who suggested it to me and were giving me the whole, what, you've never seen Avatar: The Last Airbender? What the heck? So it that's one of the rare ones that I think has sort of transcended generations that we've watched, because I've never had a high schooler be like, have you seen Farscape?
Yeah, if a child spoke
if
to
you
me
did,
like
that'd
that,
be
I would
cool.
never check out the show.
For sure.
Yeah,
Dude, you haven't seen...
teenagers are they're working on it.
They're working on it. So let's get into the legendary Max Keeble's big move. So for our listening people, if you have not had the chance to watch this film, we are going to be talking about this in depth, spoilers and all. So, if you haven't seen it, give it a watch. It's a little bit hard to find depending where you are. Here in Australia, it was on Disney Plus. Apparently, it's not in America, which I find mind-blowingly bizarre. But
Yeah, it's on HBO here for folks.
yeah.
HBO now.
And so the only thing Australians used HBO for was when Game of Thrones was a thing. So, because let's not
And nothing
forget, Australia was the country that pirated the most, and it was for Game of Thrones, because we didn't get it easily down here. So we'll be talking about Max Keeble's big move, in-depth spoilers and all. We'll go through our history, what we think of the movie, and just that kind of general stuff. So, Bartek, what is your history with this movie, if you have one at all? Because I know that you have far more of a relationship with these kind of... what I would call like cable, like TV stars and stuff. This has a lot of that stable of your Disney people, your Nickelodeon people. And I know you have far more of a relationship with those people and those kind of shows and movies more than I do. So have you seen this before?
Yeah, no, I don't think I'd even heard of it. There were definitely some people I recognized, but no, I hadn't seen it before.
And you hadn't heard of it?
I'm not sure if I had or not. Like, when you told me the title in the last episode, Max Keeble's Big Move, I wasn't sure if this was a standalone film or if it was like an entry in like the Max Keeble franchise or something like that. So I didn't know what I was getting into with that.
So my history is I have never seen this movie, but I have heard of it because when we did our former show on this podcast, Unappreciated Masterpieces, I would look around for all these unappreciated masterpieces, and Max Keeble always kept popping up, but I just never chose it or put it on the list for a few reasons, but the main one being I looked at things through IMDb, and sometimes IMDb can be a little bit deceptive on letting you know what's a TV movie and a theatrically released movie, and I just didn't do the legwork. So a lot of Disney TV movies aren't always listed as like, TV movies, because some of them do get a theatrical release. Like when you look at some of the High School Musicals, they aren't touted as TV movies, but was it 2 of them were? And then they got released later in cinemas because of the popularity. But so I always was like looking at Max Keeble and I said, oh, that's a TV thing, because we didn't do TV movies for unappreciated masterpieces. We want to stick to mainstream cinema because, if we're going to do a show about unappreciated masterpieces and you open it up to TV or direct-to-video stuff, then, it was so murky of that. We were wanting to focus more on just mainstream movies or theatrically released movies that had been overlooked. And I wasn't too sure about Max Keeble, so I just never did the legwork to check on it. So now we do this show in which we just take any recommendation for film. We did it, and I was like, oh, okay. And I looked it up afterwards. It was a theatrically released movie, but I've got to say, on first watch, I was genuinely like watching it going, oh, so this was a TV movie, because this feels like a pilot. Mm-hmm. And this feels like a pilot to some show that they were going to make.
Yeah, I was saying the same thing in my notes here, that I really would like to watch the Max Keeble show because there's such a large cast of characters and it does a lot of TV things, like the sort of freeze frames on the characters and, oh, that's my mom. and now she's a sticker that's peeling off the screen. It's like, yeah, this is a cool, fun little show. It kind of has that Malcolm in the Middle vibe of this kid is impossibly precocious and also an impossibly good actor for how old he
I will
is.
slightly disagree with you on the Malcolm in the Middle comparison, but like just because I'll get into it a bit later, but I think from the get-go, Malcolm is at least an obviously self-centered and flawed character, while in this, Max is like, he's awesome, and Malcolm is not awesome. Like, you're not looking at Malcolm in the Middle going, Malcolm's awesome. You're supposed to be like, oh, he's pathetic. And that's why
I think Magellan more means in the sense that he's precocious, like more in the sense that he's way too smart for his age.
Yeah, I just mean what you're saying with the vibe of like it being paced like a pilot. Like it does feel like we're being introduced to the world of Max Keeble.
Yes.
At least in the first 25-30 minutes of the movie.
Some could argue more. But so what were your histories with this? Because you guys suggested this. I said, hey, pick a movie that you guys genuinely like, you know, because I picked a movie last time you guys won that I really love, and I wanted to get you guys to pick a movie that you guys liked, and this was what you said. You were like, immediately, it was like, this is it. We both agree that this is a film we want to talk about and we like it. So you obviously have a history with it, but what is it?
I can go first because I'm suspecting that I have less of a history than Alan does, and I'm sort of along for the ride here. It's in the sort of sweet spot for Chatz for movies that we like to revisit of the kind of like late 90s, early 2000s nostalgia zone. That's where most of the shows that we watch come from or live in, and that's where a lot of the movies that we do for our own bonus movie episodes come from. So it hits that spot. And then for me, I associate really strongly this movie with renting it from Blockbuster with my dad. It's like one of the few movies that I could tell you definitively I watched from Blockbuster. And so it kind of accesses that, like, I'm on summer break with my dad, and we've got a couple VHSs that we're burning through. And this was a nice evening watching Max Keeble's big move. Yeah.
I'm the one with the familiarity with this film because I watched it multiple times as a kid. It was on the Disney Channel a lot. I think Disney in general had this sort of staple of actors like we've been talking about that would come up in a lot of things at the time and sort of in jokes and references and like stylistic decisions and even just like the same stereotypes and character archetypes in a lot of things, like the precocious boy and the like girl who harbors a crush on him and the like weird guy. So like the first like 30 minutes of this movie, I was just like, yeah, I know everything that's happening, but what always kind of attracted me to this film and like kept me invested in it is the fact that despite being a like otherwise fairly rote kids film, it has the unique aspect of having like, kind of two plot twists. Obviously, if you like read or know about the movie or like read the summary of it, you'll understand that it's not the first twist that matters, but the second one. But I don't know. I think that's really fun and gives the film a sort of like really cool locomotive momentum by the second half of it that just keeps everything flying forward. And I found it very entertaining as a result, even now in watching it as an adult.
So you enjoyed it watching it again for this still. What about you, Magellan? When you were here watching it as an adult, you enjoyed it still? You had not just familiarity, but just genuine enjoyment?
Yes, it was. I was delighted throughout, and I was texting Alan before this, and I was like, yeah, I have fun, but like, what's the take on this movie? And then we sort of went like, college literature class, like, let's dissect this film from a number of different angles. And that was a delightful exercise as well. Like, I think I just have a lot of fun with sort of elevating like dorky movies that shouldn't be elevated to like, oh, let's treat this as, one of the great works of cinema. And I think Max Keeble actually gives you a lot to work with in that respect.
We did the same thing.
And it's
We-
also
we did
just
the same
like-
thing with our show Unappreciated Masterpieces. Some would say,
Yeah,
hey,
that's the premise.
Big Fat Liar shouldn't get this much acclaim. And we said, hey, no, there's a lot of work done here for what is considered to be light entertainment, or something like the Agent Cody Banks movies, or the Tuxedo, or Kangaroo Jack, and so on and so forth. We also revel in just that kind of thing. So this kind of movie that was suggested, I was like, oh, we're back in the old days of the pod.
Yeah, we're home.
Bartek, what about you? This is a first time viewing. What did you think of this movie? Did you enjoy it? And I guess a further question for you, would this have been an unappreciated masterpiece? Would this have qualified? Would this have gone across the line for you?
I think this definitely would qualify for our old show, Unappreciated Masterpieces, yeah. Definitely since it was a first time viewing, I was getting into it. I was into the premise immediately because it was kind of like the early 2000s films we like, which I guess for our podcast we dubbed that the Munez era.
Yeah, because there was a specific time, we said 2000 and was it 2001 to 2004 or 5 specifically?
Yeah, somewhere there.
In which Frankie Muniz was like the child star for like guys, and then you had Hilary Duff for girls, and there was obviously others, but they were like the two standouts. And then you have the Cody Banks movie that kind of is like the culmination. And there was just that kind of era of like this certain type of attitude and comedy stylings and just kind of filmmaking that were in these kids' films. And we just call it the Muniz era because Frankie was always at the center of it all for us. So it just kind of reminded you, Bartek, of that warm pool that we've been in before, Frankie Muniz era?
Yeah, but I guess in terms of how I enjoyed the film, I enjoyed it okay, but I think in the rung of those types of films, I'd put it in a far lower place than some of the ones we've seen. There are a couple of things in it that just I felt were really messy.
Yeah, so I was going into this with no expectations. I was just kind of like, I'm going to just watch this movie. I will say a little frustration just because it was difficult to find, but that is not the film's fault. That is just the nature of the beast. And I found that this film had a lot of fruitful things for me to think about, and Magellan, you were saying like, what's the take on this? Oh, I walked away with many takes to discuss.
Okay,
so
great.
this was very fruitful for me. I felt it was very interesting to me going into this because unfortunately Alan did tell me beforehand, don't look anything up, there's a twist. So I was like, okay, I'm not looking anything up. Where's the twist? And I'm now told there's... I'm told there's two twists. He said there was two. And I just go, okay, so it mustn't be the fact... be the fact that they don't move, because that's not a twist. That's obvious. And then I'm like, what's the second twist then? Is it the fact that they still throw the bullies into the bin? I don't know. Like,
yeah, that's
and I just went... Okay, so I will say, unfortunately, it's one of those things of when you say like, "Hey, there's a twist element," and this is surprisingly more subversive than your average kids fare. And then I watched the film, and I'm like, "No, it isn't. Where's this subversive twist thing that I was hearing about that changes
the twists are they're moving, and then that they don't move, right? Those are the two twists.
Yeah, that's the two twists that I could fathom. I said to Bartek last night. I said to him on Facebook. I said, apparently there was a twist in this movie. And Bartek and I were like guessing what the twist was, and that was like an unfortunate.
Okay, Alan, what's the twist?
Well, okay, so if you watch this movie with absolutely no influence, and you don't know anything about it other than the title is Max Keeble's Big Move, you have the feeling that there's a momentum building in the first half.
Yeah,
and it's like, okay, something's gonna happen. Like, you can't just live with these bullies all the time. He's in the 7th grade. In his time of like life is so compressed right now that the next 2 years of his life are gonna feel eternal. He's like, I need to get out of this situation. And he finds out that he has an out finally, which is that his parents are they're moving to Chicago. And so he resets his whole life. And that's the first moment of like, it doesn't have to be like this anymore. We can finally like live and like start over. And that's like the beautiful dream that he starts building for himself is, I'm going to burn bridges. I'm going to shun everybody that I've ever known. And I'm going to be the person I've always wished I could be without consequence.
Yeah.
And then life hits him in the face, and he realizes that his actions have consequence. And we reach this sort of second dramatic twist of this film, which is that you can't escape your own personality and the influence that you have on people around you, the people who love you, who hate you, who don't know you, the people who you've influenced, like all of that stuff. It comes back, and he has to reckon with that. And the end of the film is him reckoning with, like, I'm not going anywhere. I need to learn to, like, work in this system and not just leave every time there's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, that is there, and I found that very interesting and compelling. It's just that thing of, like, from my point of view, and as someone who, Bartek and I have done a lot of these movies exclusively for our own podcast, I was just like, those aren't twists. Those are the inciting incident in the first act, and the character hits their low point into the second and third act. Where's a twist? I thought you were going to say the
I
twist...
don't know how any words work. For what it's worth, I don't know how any words work at
I thought
all,
the twist
but
was like, at the end, he's like, hey, don't become the bullies. And then they were like, yeah, we won't do
Yeah.
that. And they just throw him in the bin like a bully would. And I was like, oh, is that the twist? But
That's a twist, too.
and-
So 3 twists. Wow, great.
triple...
What a film,
no.
honestly.
There's a fourth twist. There's a fourth at the end.
Yeah, which is the dad is wearing the cheese
No.
outfit instead of the lobster
No,
outfit. at
it's
end.
when
That's
the
another
ice cream
twist.
man chases him and he goes, oh, here we go again. that was the
Right,
last
it's
twist.
the endlessly repeating system. He'll never escape his own
It's
fate.
Groundhog Day.
It's a time travel movie.
So, I will say this.
I'm gonna get kicked off the podcast.
I will say this. I don't want to be like, this movie sucks, but this movie
it.
wasn't... I disagree with you, Bartek. I don't think that this would have qualified for unappreciated masterpieces. I think it has a lot of elements and a lot of feeling of it, but just from the movie from my standpoint of the quality and like what's actually in there, I think just for me, I think my one of many big hurdles I had was I just looked at it and said, this doesn't feel like a movie. You guys said like, oh, the first 30 minutes. For me, the whole entire film felt like a bunch of vignettes, a bunch of scenes strung together, and it became to me a jack of all trades, master of none, because it had so many things in there, and none of them felt matured or culminated. And with me, I just kept thinking, this reminds me of this movie, this reminds me of that movie. There's literally actors from these movies it's making me think of, and those movies that are like Snow Day, I don't know if you guys have seen that, or Big Fat Liar.
Yeah, oh, I love Snow Day.
Those films did so many things that this film did, but more with a clever script and just better structured. And I just kept going, this just feels like a TV pilot. This feels like this is going to be an animated show or live action show in which Larry Miller is going to be the principal that they have to deal with. And maybe he enlists the two bullies every now and then. And like, oh, there's the hot girl that he's interested in. And it felt like a TV pilot. It never even felt like a movie. It felt like, oh, we got three episodes of this show and we've made it into a TV movie pilot. And I got to say, one thing that really bugged me was Max Keeble himself as a character. His character conflict, his character flaw, isn't introduced until 1 hour into the film. I looked at it exactly, and then the film ends 18 minutes later, and in the film, in the 18 minutes of time, they spend literally 5 to 6 minutes on his character flaw, and then it's done. And I just said to myself, I don't care about Max. And the problem was,
How would you articulate that character flaw?
I would describe Max Keeble's character flaw like Allen described it. It is a selfish nature, that devil-may-care attitude, and it comes around to bite him in the ass. But my problem is the first hour of the movie, until he gets to that cafe or diner where he hangs out with that girl he likes and he drinks milkshakes. We, the audience...
And Little Romeo.
And Little Romeo, who I learned about because of this movie. I didn't know who he was. I was like, is this Little Bow Wow? Yeah. But, okay, because that's the only Little I know from Like Mike.
Right.
And I just said, okay, the first hour of the movie, he is presented to us, the audience, as what he's doing is right. This is a good thing. And then it takes an hour for the second to third act of, oh, now he's hit his low point. But for me, in the first hour, there was no telltale signs of this was a bad thing that he was doing. It felt like, oh, this is a good thing. And then he makes this specific choice to hang out with this girl instead of his friends, and then it's a domino effect. But we're an hour into this film, and then we spend 5 to 6 minutes on exploring that character thing, and his friends forgive him very quickly.
I mean, it does sort of mirror his own understanding of whether or not he's an asshole, right? Like, his flaw is there the whole time. It's not focused on because he has this, like, I don't know where the entitlement comes from. You could say it's like white male entitlement. You could say it's cool hair entitlement. You could
bearded
say
dragon entitlement.
any number of things. Yeah. But that entitlement is I think that present throughout the film, and it's just that he doesn't become aware of his own flaw until he sees the people that he cares about being hurt, and then he's like, wait a minute, all people are people. Oh God, what have I done?
I'll just direct it.
I mean,
go on, Alan.
It's middle school. It's not high school. I think that's what's crucial about this film is that there are basic, like, human flaws and understandings of the world that this kid just does not have. Like, he doesn't realize that you can't just, like, you know, sunder entire relationships and hope that that won't bite you in the butt. Like, he has no concept of a world outside of his school life and his home life.
I understand that. Like, I understand he doesn't understand that, but it is not presented until an hour into the film to the audience who is watching that what he's doing is wrong, because he's set up as an underdog. And he's set up as a cool guy at the same time. Like, Max is cool, but also he's an underdog because his dad is like this nebbish guy and he's got a bully and like all this stuff. And what he's doing is purely reactionary and justified. And that was a thing in which it goes, okay, I'll direct this to you, Bartek. Did you feel any of this kind of stuff, especially with movies we've covered on the show that kind of do the same thing? Like, for instance, in Big Fat Liar, we know instantly that Frankie Muniz lying and doing these things, even if he has a justification for it, is a bad thing.
He gets immediate consequences.
Those are character flaws, and the movie explores it, and he doesn't realize it until later in the movie. He has an arc, he has a journey, but to us, the audience, it's presented as this is a flaw. This is a thing that has to be overcome. Did you have any of the issues that I'm talking about with this film?
No, when I was watching the film, at first I was trying to understand the character, and we got an idea of the people that he didn't like, that he wanted to do these things to, were people who were unjustifiably, you know, in a sense, bullying him in many different ways, whether they're a traditional bully, a stock market 13-year-old, or a principal.
Or an ice cream man.
And ice cream man, too. But I was trying to look at it from the logic of, okay, this is a kid's film, so maybe we are meant to, you know, see what he's doing as a sort of catharsis thing and, like, be on his side the whole way through. So definitely when it came to the milkshake bar and he didn't go to visit his friends, despite the fact that most of the film, it was building up how close these characters were and how, you know, they wanted to spend his last day together. It did feel a little bit like weird to justify why he didn't go to Robe's house where the party was.
It was one of those scenes. It's like in I always think of this. It's that second act hitting the low point thing, and I always think of Shrek. There's that bit in Shrek in which he mishears Fiona talking, and then they get all pissy and separate, and then they have to get back together because that's what we need. And I feel that with Max. It's just kind of like, oh, we have to hit the dramatic point, but it's like weird because it takes an hour to get to that big, juicy, dramatic point.
Yeah. And you have to earn...
Oh, sorry.
You have to earn the dramatic weight of the scene where Robe and, what's her name?
That's a good point, isn't it?
Megan.
Yeah, but yeah, that is a good point. Where Robe and Megan are sitting outside and she's like, I literally baked you a cake. I'm a middle schooler who baked my best friend a cake. Why do you not care that I like you? Like, and it's not even the romantic thing. It's like there are people who are concerned for your well-being and want to see you happy. Like they are the ones who tell him like you should be fine moving. Maybe you'll find people over there who are just copies of us. And they like appeal to his sense of like being a huge nerd. And they're like, ooh, clones, because they know him. But instead he shuns that and he looks for what's new and shiny
and sexy.
and sexy, which is so weird that this movie sexualizes Jenna. But the way this movie uses most of its female characters in general is very strange.
You mean the Bunsen
'Cause
burner
everyone's just
scene
there
that
to propel.
represented erections for the teacher? Yeah, that was very weird.
Exactly.
And the casual racism towards little Romeo for no apparent reason in that first scene is introduced. I was like, what is going on?
First name Lil.
Lil Romeo.
Like, what? So my
I
thing,
still
by the way.
think-
Oh yeah, go. Sorry,
Oh, yeah,
Michelle.
go
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I still think that a way to think about this film is that it is presenting and then haphazardly and incomplete. Like, I do think that in some senses this is a failed film, which is part of what makes it interesting to me, because I think that it's presenting and deconstructing partially the sense of entitlement that a lot of protagonists like this have. Like, if you were to sort of put this movie next to Ferris Bueller's Day Off or something, because I think the reason that like we're with Max for an hour and we're like, yeah, totally rooting for this guy, is because he's just the archetype of a character that in all these movies we root for the things that he does. And it's like, oh, that's the girl, and he's supposed to get the girl, and he's supposed to beat the bullies, but there are just things about his world that are like a couple degrees off of the trope in a way where it's like, this is strange. And then the movie begins to deconstruct and say like, well, actually, you're not entitled to those things, and like taking those things for yourself and disregarding consequence and living in like a completely egocentric way makes you a terrible person. But then the movie still gives him everything that he wants,
Yeah, and I agree. Like, I think there is a deconstruction now. I'm not saying that there isn't. I just think that it's so short amount of time in the actual film, and it's so late in the game. And when that scene happens of him going to the diner, it's it's that scene. You just know watching. It's the contrived conflict scene. But I don't want to just say all the negatives, because I do actually, unfortunately, have quite a lot. That isn't just it. But I do want to talk about positives, because this is a movie you guys both recommended, and I do have some positives to talk about as a first-time viewer. Larry Miller.
Oh, one of the stars of this film. Incredible
We've had him on the show a few times before, haven't we, Bartek? And he's always been a gem, but our big complaint with him always is he's not in it enough. And that still is relevant now. What do you think, Bartek?
Definitely that was a complaint that we had in other things. I think he was in it decently enough in this, especially since, he was probably the most prominent of the antagonists. He was the last one to be dealt with.
I don't know. I think... I don't know if he was the prominent one. I felt like
Well, he was the big one.
Oh, yeah, he was the adult.
Yeah.
Like, he's the big one. But,
Yeah,
I don't feel like he was the prominent one. Like, my thing is, again, my film brain, I'm just going, too many villains. There's 4 of them. And they all have to share screen time together. And I feel like maybe just 2, maybe 3.
I don't know. I think this movie handles multiple villains better than Spider-Man 3.
But I'm not comparing it to Spider-Man 3.
I agree with that.
But my thing is, it's just, like, for instance, we have the adult villain, Bartek. We love adult villains in children's media, such as Paul Giamatti in Big Fat Liar. And that movie knew that a character like him needs the time. We need to spend it with him being the antagonist. And then you have a minor antagonist. And I even said in Big Fat Liar that the minor antagonist didn't need to be in the film. The bully character, and that didn't need to be in the film. And this film, I'm just like, I wish just Larry Miller was the big antagonist, and then like the school ground bully character was like the thug antagonist, and maybe maybe the 2 antagonists interact more. But in this, you have like 4 of them, and like the ice cream man is like, I don't even know what that is. Like, I don't know why he's even here. It just feels like this would be in the cartoon version of the show.
Yeah. Well, I think part of the reason there's all these villains and what works in some ways about it is that they are all different examples of like how Max in his past has unintentionally like harmed other people in meaningful, serious ways. Especially the ice cream man and the financier, if you will. Not that Max was the one that like led to him losing $1 million, but like he's the reason the Ice Cream Man is struggling so much. Is he almost got him fired? He got him in trouble because his mom found us, or his mom reported him for finding a cockroach in his snow cone.
But the film doesn't present that was a lie. That's a truth. And from what we get of the Ice Cream Man, that is a truth. I don't think he didn't have that. So we're being told Max is awesome because he at one point took down this bully figure. And now he's in his life all the time.
Right.
The financier guy, he was the one that I'm like, he could go from the film. I like Orlando Brown. I mean, he's a weird guy in real life, but I like him. But him and Max didn't have anything together. They were just people that interacted. But the other bully character, whose name is eluding me right now, they were childhood friends, and he got traumatized at his birthday party. So there is a connection there. And then Larry Miller is just, he's the big boss. He's the principal. He's the adult that has to be taken down. But
yeah, I think the issue with the villains is that there isn't really. I think this movie could sustain that many antagonists if there was like a unifying principle among them, but there isn't really.
No.
I think the thing that I found the most interesting that this movie didn't really deliver on or explore is I actually liked the like Wall Street Orlando Brown's character. Because there's just something really satisfying about a kids movie depicting like a stockbroker as the bully.
No, I like the idea too. I like that idea.
And I also liked the like school newspaper kids who kept trying to figure out like the flashiest way to spin stuff.
Yeah.
And it almost would have been fun if Max Keeble's big move was like the middle school movie where all of the middle schoolers were like different sort of adult society tropes or
microcosm
characters
of the real world, adult world.
Right.
Exactly.
And the movie doesn't really do that because it's still got to have like the punk bully and the principal. But even the principal could be like, I guess he's the president, right? Like he actually is directly adorning himself as the government. So I suppose that works. And then in that read, the story of Max Keeble is the story of the sort of like, your average Joe, in quotes, pointing at all these different forces and saying like, look, this is who's keeping me down, like the government, Wall Street, the media, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah,
They're all keeping me down when actually there's like fundamental problems with myself that I'm not examining and that are like contributing to making these forces what they are. I don't think that the movie intended to do that.
And I don't think it really did do it.
And it didn't accomplish it. Right.
Bartek, what are some things that you enjoyed about this film? Any particular characters, moments, or ideas?
Definitely, because when I was watching the film, I didn't have the thought of, this feels like a pilot film, but hearing the opinion here, it just all like comes together like, oh yeah, this really does feel like a film of setups. That will have eventual payoffs. And in that sense, I could almost appreciate the film a bit more if it did follow through on creating a Max Keeble universe, because there are a lot of interesting, characters that they introduce. Like when we first met the stockbroker character, the Orlando Brown character, I thought he was just going to be like, a one-scene gag character, and I didn't immediately get that he was, a malicious bully type character. I thought like he was actually a misguided, stock guy who's desperate to get back to, his wealth. So when they followed through on him being a villain, I was, a bit thrown off about that. Things I did like though, like I said, I love the reporters who are always trying to spin bullying into a story. I think that was really fun. I think the film has a lot of good variety in its cast. That's definitely something that I can say, and it's just if they could use it a bit more, that would have been great. Because even on a personal level, I'm not going to go on a tangent on this, they had a cast member from Saved by the Bell in this, and he literally had like half a scene and then a reaction, and that was all he was used for. And I thought like, oh, well, you took the time to introduce him, you then interrupted him with these other 3 Eastern European gag characters, and then never really did anything with him again.
Yeah, there was a lot of characters that they really focused on and they went nowhere, like hot teacher lady, and she's just there to introduce pheromones as a thing for
Oh
a
my
gag,
God.
or
Oh
like.
my gosh.
So I agree. I liked all these characters and kids and all these people, but there was a thing of it would have been nice if they got used more. There was that fun game I think we all must have played where it's like, hey, it's that kid, and hey, it's that
Yeah.
adult, and hey, I remember them from that show and this show and this show and this show and this movie and this movie, and it was like a fun game of like how many can we pick? Like, oh,
Well, I
there's
think
that
that's-
Malcolm in the Middle kid, and there's this Big Fat Liar kid, and there's Snow Day cast got a
Yeah,
reunion.
there's the hot rich lady from Hitch.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of scenes and moments in this movie that are designed, and cameos that are designed to just like stick in your head, so that when you like think about this movie, 19 years later, you're like, oh, I vividly remember them dancing on the tables at the restaurant, and I remember Little Romeo being in this movie, and my thesis about that is he's had an interesting career. He's the son of, I believe, Master P is his dad's name. He's a rapper. It was one of those like, I'm going to make my son famous kind of, and by like getting him into basketball and getting into rap, and we're just gonna put him in things. But like, he's not a character. He's entirely like that name, so that people remember that name, and like, some people watched the Nickelodeon sitcom that he had, the Romeo Show. But other than that, it's like, is he just there because we know? Like that, it's just name recognition. It's pure brand recognition. That why is Tony Hawk in this movie for 3 seconds?
Because it's funny.
What are you doing, guys?
Because it's funny.
It-
That's it. That's
it
like
is
the
funny.
logic.
Why is-
it's funny.
And the rest of it is like the plotting is about getting us to all of these scenes that are supposed to be really memorable. Like, why is there a food fight scene where Robe uses a tuba and says like, it's mustard. There's no catching up. There's no ketchup. It's all mustard. He shoots mustard out of a tuba like it's a machine gun. It's because it looks cool and because it's memorable.
It's fun. I'm not. Yeah, there's a lot of fun little set pieces in the film. I'm trying to think of other positives I have. Like other than seeing people I like, oh, there's the dad from Lizzie McGuire or stuff like that. I'm trying to think, like, the performances overall were pretty good. I did find, just because of, like I said, I found Max a little bit hard to tolerate, just because he was such Kevin McAllister, precocious genius boy who's perfect, and then they try to
Yeah, but I think the actor's doing a really good job with it, though. I think the character's great.
But sometimes it's hard to separate, and especially this is the only thing I've seen him in. So it's kind of like, okay, like I can tell he's doing the best he can. I think Josh Peck was severely misused. Yeah, he was. He's a funny kid. He's a funny guy, and they just don't give him jokes. Really, they don't give him much to do.
So, like,
he's just there.
Exactly. The one or two times that he does make jokes are very good and like funny and memorable, because he just knows how to be self-deprecating without being like, obnoxious about it, and he just gets these quick little gags in and these little jabs that are very funny. I think Josh Peck, especially at the time, was super talented and is another one of my favorites that's underutilized.
As a kid who
they kind of just make jokes at his expense.
Yeah,
and
that's
a lot of it is.
But they don't even make that many. If they're going to do that, if they're going to have here's the fat kid who pukes and we're going to make jokes at his expense, at least do it. If you're going to commit to it.
If you're going to do it, do it.
That's
like, we just kind of get the ice cream truck guy being like, "Oh, my favorite customer."
Like, okay.
Which also, there's something there. Like, that could have been the movie. That his best friend is in league with his villain.
Yeah.
Right. But instead, the movie has to get us to all these set pieces, and we have to understand, like, here's why he wants to move. He wants to move because he's being bullied from all directions, and so he's learning to come to terms with that. And as soon as he does, he starts burning all the bridges. He starts flirting with Jenna, who, again, I feel so weird about the way that she's sexualized in this film, and like,
so what the film wanted.
Clearly, this actress is older than everyone else in the movie.
16.
The actress was 16 when this came out.
Yeah, 16.
And she's playing a 13-year-old, presumably.
I think she's supposed to be older.
No, she's a 9th grader, so she's 15,
in 9th
16.
grade, so she's like
She is a
14,
9th grader? What are you doing, Max? Don't talk to 9th graders, you weird boy.
But why not? Like, for Max, like you said, he's burning the bridges. And, when you're a kid and you're, like, going through these changes, there's going to be, like, some attraction towards girls in different years or whatever. That's not the problem. The problem is Jenna. Is it Jenna? Is that her name?
Yeah.
She is weirdly sexualized and isn't a character.
Yeah.
Right.
The only thing I noted about Jenna that I really, really liked was the fact that
They play
she
the same
doesn't-
song every time she entered.
I thought that was hilarious, and we're going to talk about that. But no, it's the fact that when she finally, at the end, when Max is like, actually, my friends matter more to me than this 9th grader who doesn't even remember my name. She doesn't, like, get with someone else. Her ending is to not be with Max. Her ending isn't to, like, be with a cool jock, because there is no, like, cool jock in this movie other than the 2 foreign kids who throw the guys into the dumpster.
3.
She's just kind of,
foreign
like,
kids.
slid aside. 3. Is it 3 of them?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
Rule of
that's
threes.
rule of threes. That's true. Yeah, she just kind of like brushed aside because it's like, all right, now time to focus, and then the movie's over. Like, I almost at that point I was like, all right, now we get to watch, Max hang out with Megan and Robe, and it's like, no, the movie's over. That's it. You like get 2 seconds of them, and that's it. That kind
This
of
is a
bummed me
pretty
out.
misogynist film. I mean, I think that's a deep problem with it, and a blind spot that like I don't know, you could make the case that, like, because the Britney Spears hit is so overt, they're like trying to make a comment on it, but it really doesn't feel that way.
No.
It just is like you're having a 16-year-old bend over and you're playing Britney Spears in the background.
Which is hysterical because the whole thing with Britney Spears' career is that she was being hypersexualized at 18 years old.
Younger.
And that was like a whole thing. And younger, yeah.
And-
I will.
And then
Oh, go on.
And then, like, you just, I don't know, like, it really is this sort of male entitlement thing of, oh, I deserve to be with, like, the hottest girl in school, and then the hottest girl in school wants me, and then I get to turn her down and, like, like, pity date my best friend who's, like, far more competent than I am and, like, a much better person and was the voice of reason the whole time, and I never actually listened to her once.
Okay.
But I'll allow her to hold my hand. And then the whole, just the science teacher with the pheromones
Yep.
thing is so...
The Bunsen
is
burners
so
representing
weird.
erections was a very nice touch.
Yeah, like she was like trying to turn on the boys in her class. Like, what are you doing, lady? This is weird. When Max
Statutory, that's what
kisses
she's
her
doing.
hand-
Yeah.
When Max kisses her hand and she like stares longingly after him when he walks away, it's like, this is too much.
I was going to say more positives, and there are a few, but you touched upon this. And I was worried, like, oh, I don't want to get too deep into this, but I really did get angry. I'm really pissed off at this movie after watching it because of the weird, toxic kind of, oh, I'm the guy and I deserve this, but also how the female characters were treated, but specifically his friend, Megan.
Mhm.
Yeah. Megan gets the shortest of shrifts in this movie.
We
It's
are
very
told
unfortunate.
via the language of film, and we have all seen films and TV shows. From the very beginning, you know that she has a thing for him because of how this works. She's the friend, and she's
Right.
the girl, and he's the
Right.
main character. We had a very similar situation, didn't we, Bartek, with the movie Snow Day. Snow Day has this exact same idea, which is...
And she's in it also.
Yes,
Dana
and she's
Craig
the
in it.
younger sister. And Josh
Yeah.
Peck's in it too as her best friend.
Yeah.
But in Snow Day, he is an entitled guy who goes after this popular chick. And he has a best friend who's obviously into him. Obviously into him is the thing I've got to say. Because
Yeah.
in this film, it was not at all obvious to me that she was into him in a romantic sense. In any way, it felt more
No,
of
not
a
at
platonic. But then Josh Peck tells us specifically she likes you. And that means, more than just platonically. She likes you. And I got so annoyed.
Really likes you.
I got so annoyed. I can do a really good young Josh Peck impression from Snow Day specifically. We'll get into that. But, man, oh man. No,
Are you there, Ryan? Oh, there you are.
I'm here. So the thing is, in Snow Day, the interesting twist is the popular girl is actually a character, and you could actually see how the guy would actually form a relationship with her. And when they don't, it's actually meaningful and actually feels characterful and doesn't feel like you said, Magellan, in which he goes, I don't want you. I'm going to be with my best friend. It doesn't feel that offhanded in this kind of way. And what really bothers me in this movie is Megan is reduced down to she's the girl. From the very beginning, we as an audience are assuming that this is where it's going to go, but then it doesn't do that. It just doesn't. And then Josh Peck says, oh, she likes you. And then really they don't really get together by the end, which is fine. That could be fine. I didn't think that they really got together by the end, him and Megan. They never really connected, and here's my big problem. What did she do as a character to insert the knowledge that she actually liked him? We were just told that, and we assume that because she's the girl in the film. But I cannot recollect a moment in which she as an actual character asserted her romantic feelings towards him in any way. At least in Snow Day, she did, and it actually mattered. But in this, she's just reduced down to, because she's the girl. She obviously likes him.
Right.
There's a very clear read in this that she maybe doesn't even like him, and then that's Robe saying that, and she just wants to hang out with her childhood friend. Because everything she's doing is like, I baked for you, which, as we understand gender roles, is like a form of affection, but like she's just baking to like, say goodbye to an old friend. She wants to hang out with him. She wants to like go do pranks and like go to the movies and like go to the animal shelter with him. Like she's not saying like I want to like hold your hand and anything like that.
No, she isn't.
It's one of those.
But the film says
she's never talking about that. Yeah, it's other people saying that, and the film says it. Yeah,
the film doesn't even follow through on how they introduce her. It's like, oh, she always carries the clarinet and she trips. So you're like, oh, she's also like a clumsy sort of ditzy character. But then for the rest of the film, she's kind of just like, deadpan reactor
nothing
character.
gag. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really got pissed off at that after watching the film, because I just thought about it. I was like, wait, did they even get together in the end? No, not really. So what was even the point of reducing a character down to that? And the answer is because she's the girl. That's all I can give you is because she's the girl. That's it. Like at the end, that's it. That's the only reason. And that kind of really annoys me when we're talking about, this film does all these subversive things or it has these ideas. At the end of the day, it was a pretty weirdly sexist kind of film, and I don't usually get into that minutia.
Deeply sexist.
I don't usually get into that minutia, especially with children's films. I try to give it a bit of a break, but okay, there's the boner jokes with the Bunsen burners, and there's this and this and this. But at the end of the day, what really offends me is a strong female character that we are supposed to have in the movie as the voice of reason, which is always what the girl character is supposed to be in films, is reduced down to, she likes you, because of course she does. Of course she likes you romantically, but she never asserts that as a character. We're just told that. And
also
it pisses
then
me
the
off.
inherent assumption is like her friendship only has meaning to him once he knows that she likes him.
Exactly. And then he has to redeem and maybe they'll get together in the end. And who knows, but that really, really frustrated me, because when we do other films like, say, Big Fat Liar or Snow Day, even though romance in kids' movies necessarily isn't the strongest thing in writing terms, at least those films put the effort in. They at least put the effort in and show it and actually let things speak. Like when Amanda Bynes and Frankie Muniz get together in a romantic kind of capacity in the kids' film Big Fat Liar, it's earned because you understand why, and it isn't just reducing her to the girl character. She's actually got some agency, whether it's romantic or not. In this film, she doesn't have any agency. She's just there, and then at the end, she helps save the day, and that's kind of cool. But by that point, she's already reduced to, she just does it because she's romantically involved. That's it. And
poor, even like, it's not even just Megan and Jenna. I mean, every woman I can think of that's in this movie is put down in some way and ignored in some way. You have Max's mom, who starts the film off by talking about like, I love this house because I finally perfected it. We have the furniture that we want. Like, I've achieved this sort of American dream of like owning all of the things I could ever want. It seems like an impossible goal as an adult to think of, like, not only owning a house, but owning a house and having everything you want for it. And she's just put upon, and then the dad is like, we're moving. And she's like, all right, well, I guess I'll go fuck myself. and all my dreams are gone. And then you also, just bit character, have Miss Rangoon, who is the assistant to the principal, who is again just completely ignored, and it's just her gag is to be like, yeah, you're gonna do crimes again and get away with it. That's great. Good luck with that. And like, she's just doing her job. She's collecting paychecks while this guy's going to jail. I really hope that the imaginary sequel to this movie, has Miss Rangoon as the principal. I think that'd be wonderful.
Yeah, I think
she deserves it.
That just kind of bugs me, because when it comes to Max, he's learning lessons and whatnot, and he's supposed to be doing this. But, one of the things is, Jenna is sexualized into filmmaking, and in turn, she's sexualized by Max, because what he does is an act because he's sexually attracted to her. He doesn't have any kind of feelings for her as a person. He likes looking at her, and that can be fine in itself, but again, the way the film presents her, she's like this shallow character, which again can be fine, but it's this weird thing where they shoot it in a very sexualized fashion, and it's done at that point that, we have to have him hit his low point, and it just kind of all culminates in all these things. There is things in here that I do like, but I think the problem is there's just so few of them that get outweighed by the negatives. I keep thinking this wants to be as clever as Big Fat Liar and as charming as Snow Day and all these other films, but it just doesn't do it because there's too many characters. There's one of my complaints is also, and I don't know, Bartek, about you're a bit different to me, but I just felt like this film wouldn't shut the fuck up. Like, it's constantly noises and visual language just thrown on screen. Like, oh, here's a thing where it's still framed and writing comes on the screen and a boing, and they're making all these sound effects and kids are screaming, and there was like 2 or 3 scenes that were quiet, and they weren't even that long. They just cut immediately to, like, here's Larry Miller, blah, blah, and I just was like, this film won't shut up.
Exactly, the film won't shut because there's infinite like sight gags too, and it's like someone has to fall and make a loud noise every 3 seconds, or else the kids are gonna get bored. Which I understand from a filmmaking perspective. You're like, this is a movie where kids need to be able to turn this on and be like, okay, what's going on? I get it. All right, it's actiony. Here we go, like instantly. But it ends up being so like hyperkinetic that it's a lot to take.
Was it like that during all the scenes where the 3 friends were just talking? Because that happens a fair bit throughout the film, doesn't it?
They don't really sit down and talk that much. When they do, they're planning, and you get the music, the bump, 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 that kids' music. That's like they're planning. You have the scene in which he doesn't show up. You have the scene in which he tells them they're leaving. And you have, I guess, like one of the scenes near the end, just to give it some fair shot. Oh, and you have a scene with his parents. And that's like it. That's it. The rest.
Well, and they have that heart-to-heart, or maybe it's the initial planning, actually, where they're in the
treehouse.
It's like, oh no, where they're having this sort of like slow conversation about like, yeah, it sucks, I'm moving, and then the maybe the filmmakers, the thought process was, okay, this is kind of a slow conversation. What's the most interesting place we can put it? How about a junkyard?
Yeah.
While cars are getting crushed.
Yeah, well, that junkyard comes back later, you see.
True, right. It's all build up. I think the closest thing the movie has to a truly quiet moment is a moment that should have mattered more, where Max is planning stuff with Rob and Megan, and they're sitting in a treehouse, and he just kind of stares at the two of them like, wow, I really do have 2 friends who are like helping me come up with this wacky, absurd plan that's gonna like get all the revenge I've ever wanted on all my bullies. And he like breathes on that and sits on that for half a second, and then we're right back into the fun. And it's like that never matters. Max is never like realizing like, oh, I had that, until like you said, the last like minute of the movie where he's like, oh, whoops, shoot, I had friends, crap, I had friends, they're good. They're the only reason I was able to do any of this.
As a child who did not grow up with all of these Disney Nickelodeon shows, there are some people that I'm a bit of a blind spot. Like Josh Peck, I know him from Snow Day, and I know of him as an adult and what he did on the Drake and Josh show, but I never actually watched that show. And the thing that I've always found confounding when watching a movie like this is that, if you don't know people, if you haven't engaged in the media these people are in, you have certain expectations or a certain idea of who these people are, or what kinds they play. In Snow Day, he plays the fat kid who falls down and farts, but he's very much a quippy character. He's always making jokes. They even say in the audio commentary, Josh Peck in between shoots would go downtown and do stand-up. Like, that's how clever he is. And I always think, not having watched a full episode of Drake and Josh, I'm like, oh, I always thought that Josh Peck, although a big guy, maybe there's jokes about him being fat, I always thought that he was kind of like a clever kid and gives zingers and is kind of like, a bit more of your neurotic type. But in this movie, he's presented as, I'm a fat kid who falls down, and that's all he's got. That's all he's got. And I just found it very disheartening because I've seen him in one other movie in which they have that element, but they actually give him something. In my perception, I thought Josh Peck was a bit more of a character, like an actor who was given characters with a little bit more than just he's fat and he farts.
Yeah.
But in this movie, that's all he's got. That's all he's got. And I found it very bummer, but also, when I think Josh Peck, I think he's funny. From what I have seen of him and what I know of him, I know he's a funny guy. He is not funny in this movie. They don't give him anything funny to do. They don't give him anything. Like, you say there's a couple. I don't even think so. I found him there. He's there. He's just there. I didn't find him amusing at any point, and I want to, because I like him. He seems like a cool guy. But in this, they just didn't give him anything to work with. And it was just like, okay, you got a funny kid, and you're not going to use it. Okay. Right.
Yeah, they had such a clear, I feel like the only character who had a very clear comedic game to them was the principal. And everybody else, there's sort of like half-baked ideas, or you have a scene, I think like Bartek was saying, like, oh, we know that Megan is supposed to be a certain kind of character, but then that just isn't really delivered on or characterized later. And it seems like the only character that they really got right is the principal, because he has like his consistent thing about saying like he doesn't just have a zero tolerance policy, he has a sub-zero tolerance policy,
which is more than zero.
Yeah, or saying that X-courage is the opposite of encourage, or like his whole shtick is very well defined, and I think that other characters suffer from not having that to the same extent.
And
this movie could totally function. Sorry, Bartek, with just like we said this earlier, but like just him as the villain.
Yeah, he would be the Marty
He's
Wolf.
literally doing crimes. He's literally arrested in this movie for doing an illegal thing.
He should be the
For
Paul
deferring
Giamatti of this movie. He should be Marty Wolf, but he's not. He's there, and
he's the last one that's taken down. So obviously you think of him as the main one. Well, he's the one you should have kept.
I think he has a multi-layered shticks going on, and I think that might just because of Larry Miller. He's a character actor. We have seen him in a bunch of things, and he always plays a lot of slimy roles. And when you see him, and he's performed this kind of a lot, he just exudes more energy to it. And that's not to disservice the children acting in this movie who are lumped with just a character type. They're obviously very good too, but he's a seasoned pro at doing this kind of sleazy character.
Right.
And I think he adds multiple layers, not just the written stuff, but there's more to it that I think he adds as a performer, and he's a breath of fresh air. But the problem is, I wish that they focused on him more. At the end, he's like, I'm going to destroy this zoo that you love so much. And I didn't care because, one, we didn't even focus on that animal sanctuary rescue a lot.
Yeah, that was such a weird extra thing, right? Like,
Max just happens to really like volunteering at this zoo. And it just happens to be the one that's being shut down.
Because he's a good guy.
I feel like that was
he's
like,
a good guy.
Because he's
that
a
was like
cool
the
nerd.
moment
He's a cool nerd
before.
like him.
It's really cool that the school he ended up going to is right next to it.
Yeah, and that the school can easily have a wild animal like a chimpanzee come in and rip your face off. I mean, that was nice. Because when that chimp ran through the window and started attacking Larry Miller, I was like, that's genuinely frightening if you thought about it in reality.
Yeah. Didn't the trivia say that he got a concussion?
Yeah. It's just odd to me. Like, they have all these disparate elements. So it's like, okay, we have all these bully characters. We have all these, like, oh, Max is involved in this. Oh, he's going to destroy this thing that Max likes so he can build a football stadium. But, oh, it doesn't matter because Max is moving anyway. And there came a point where, can someone clarify this? Larry Miller says to him, oh, you thought that you saved the animal rescue. No, you didn't. What did Max do to think that he saved it?
I missed it. I don't know. Maybe they cut it. It wasn't in the film. Who knows?
Yeah, if anything, Max was against trying to help it on the basis of trying won't do anything.
Yeah, he was a nihilist.
Max's MO in this film was, modus operandi, is to just burn bridges. It's basically a burning the bridge plot, and then, oops, can't burn the bridges because I'm on this side.
Can someone explain the joke? Other than the initial joke of Josh Peck wearing a robe, like initially it's like, oh, that's odd, but what's the joke?
It's exactly what Max says at the beginning. He says, "Do you know somebody in your school, and this is like him talking to the middle school audience watching this movie,
Yeah.
who is just weird but doesn't care and has a weird quirk, but no people don't care about it. That is all it is.
They don't do any jokes
It's
with
like-
it though. At the end,
No,
No,
except
he
for the
waves it
part
as
where
a
the teacher
flag.
is like, yes.
but that's the thing. He wears it as a flag at the end, and the way it's done, it made it feel like to me, did I miss something? Like, oh, this is like the big character thing for Josh Peck. He's finally not wearing the robe and he's waving about, and it felt like that thing, like, oh, he's overcome something. But
Like he took the weights off, his power limiting weights off, and now he's like super strong, and he like throws the ice cream man off a bridge or something.
yeah, and I was like, okay. But that was the thing. It felt like, oh, this is a gag. Now, this is a very specifically odd thing to say, but when a film like Fred 3, Camp Fred,
Oh God.
does a better job with this exact same joke, you're in real trouble. Because there's a joke in Fred 3, Camp Fred, in which there's a girl who's called Spoons because she has a spoon in her hand and she's always eating, and she's like a thin Asian girl. And there's like the comedy juxtaposition of you're seeing this and you're like, okay, that's odd. But at the end, they have to enter in this, in their camp, a food eating competition. Oh, she wins because she's always eating. She's always got a spoon.
Right.
There's a through line, but him just like, and he's called Robe. He's always wearing a robe. Other than just that
Well, all
being
that stuff in
initially funny, there's nothing to it, and it's just kind of like, okay,
It's like if you've ever seen the film Sky High, which is another Disney Channel
Yes.
film. The whole thing about one of the
Oh,
characters
we
being
gotta commentary that. Sorry,
we
but-
do. No, you're right. It's the American live action My Hero Academia movie.
mm-hmm.
But basically, there's a character in that movie who turns into a gerbil, and she thinks that her power is useless until they need to get into some vents, because the point
Yep.
is that everybody's useful in their own way.
not in Max Keeble. Everyone's kind of useless in their own way
Correct. He has the robe just because he has the robe.
because
the
they wrote it
girl
because
has-
they
It's
wrote
just-
it down as a
It seems like it's the same level of characterization as Megan, where it's like, what's unique about her? Oh, she has a clarinet or an oboe or whatever. What's weird about him? He's got a robe.
yeah.
But then, yeah, his character isn't any deeper than like he's the best friend guy.
Yep. He's there to say, hey, she likes you. That's what he's there for. Like,
Wasn't there also a mention that Jenna plays the clarinet?
yeah.
Yeah, they both do.
Yeah, they mentioned that at one point, but they didn't really follow through much on like a mirroring thing, did they?
No, she just kicked her out of her chair. Right, and rightly so,
Yeah.
by the way.
Yeah, because her name was on it.
Her name's on it,
That's a good gag. That's a good
Yeah,
visual
that's a
gag.
good gag. Yeah, that's a good gag.
I guess. Like,
If you can read.
if you can read. Yeah, there's like, here's the thing. I know some people will be listening and saying, and maybe even you guys are like, hey, Ryan, you're being very harsh against this Disney children's film from 2001. And I am being harsh, because when we did Unappreciated Masterpieces, we really went out of our way to choose movies that had a little bit more than what was on the surface. And I really feel like this is just surface level stuff. Although there is this deconstructionist twist that we want to talk about or whatever, I just don't think it amounts to anything beyond just that's the inciting incident and that's the third act, second to third act low point, and that's not a twist. That's not many things other than what you have in these movies. When it was like his parents aren't moving, I wasn't shocked. I knew immediately that was going to be happening. As soon as they pitched the idea, oh, he's going to burn bridges, I'm like, oh, well, then he won't move. The twist of Max Keeble's big move is he doesn't move. Like,
The
I
title
guess-
is misleading.
I guess this is on me, but that was in the synopsis. So when it happened so late, I was like, "Oh, this is really weird that they'd advertised the film like this."
Yeah.
Because I thought
It happens.
yeah, I
it
thought
happens
that
later
since
than
it's
I
in the
thought.
synopsis, it would be like that everything would happen much sooner. Like introduce the bullies sooner, introduce the burning bridges sooner, introduce the not moving things sooner, and then like the second half of the film is all repercussions for that and making peace. But instead, we have the third act low point before we find out that he's not moving, and yeah, I just felt that was really strange.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to is, like when they made Max Keeble, they weren't trying to make like a new kind of film, right? They were trying to make
No.
like your standard middle school fit in, things are hard, I'm a protagonist kid guy movie, with a couple extra ideas. And I think because of that, like the movie's not really trying to upend anything, but the extra ideas that are thrown in there have, some of them I think have a subversive quality that make it so that you can look at Max Keeble and think about, like, if this movie had tried to fulfill some of the promises that it makes, or some of the things that it like half-heartedly does, if it tried to really do those things, I think that it could be like a really classic kid film that's different, saying different things than a lot of other kid films are. But it doesn't fully deliver on those things. But I guess my experience watching it was like, it was fun to sort of imagine those ideas taken to their full extent, what they could have accomplished.
Yeah.
And so for that reason, I had fun with it. But like, it is a flawed and kind of like half-baked film, because I think there's just an inherent cynicism of like, yeah, whatever, we're making a kid thing, and he's like a middle school kid,
And he has a bearded dragon, and he rides a bike, and he's a paper boy, and that doesn't really matter. But he's cool. He likes animals,
also...
and here we go again. God. My thing is, that is true what you said, but there's also the problem of just basic scripting is barely there. Like what we said about the girl character, what we said about, what I at least feel about him having flaws is not introduced until late in the movie, and then it's only really fully fleshed out for like 5 minutes, and basic things of a script. And I know not every film has to follow the 3-act structure and the basic things of a script, but when you have a film like this that is doing it, but then it's not doing the basics of other things, it really is noticeable. And when you're a kid, you don't notice these things unless you're very observant. Like, one of the things that I did with Unappreciated Masterpieces is, like, I chose films that I enjoyed as a kid, same with Bartek, but we also chose films that we hadn't seen but others have spoken of. And there's always that thing of, like, you know, even as a kid, I didn't like being spoken down to. I didn't like being patronized by a film or by a piece of media. Even as a kid, I always got enthralled as a kid when there was mature things, but also just good typical script writing things. When I do something like, when we talk about Big Fat Liar, it is so mature to see as a kid an adult be so silly but still be such an adult at the same time, and to have a character that's flawed, and something like Jumanji, where that movie is so mature for a kids film, but also like it's silly and it has Robin Williams being zany. And this film, I just was like, this would have been one of those films as a kid. I would have felt like, oh, this is speaking down to me. And maybe that's also between myself and you guys from Chatz, there's also a thing in which I'm an Australian. And sometimes, as much as American media as I have consumed in my life, there is that thing of, it's very American. And that can be a little, and this film was very American. And as a kid, I definitely know in my heart, I would have felt that, because I understand, like, from films and whatnot, this whole school environment and the bad teacher and all of this. And, you know, that's not even real in real life necessarily anyway. It's exaggerated for media. But there is this thing of, as an Australian and as a kid who didn't like being patronized, sometimes some American isms that I see in media are very patronizing to someone who isn't from America, and maybe even for people who are from America. And it's just like, to me, I just see something like this and I go, it's not even doing the basics of scripts, as well as just being a little too American for me, a little bit too, like, he's a precocious, awesome kid, and there's just nothing there. And I think as a kid, I wouldn't have cared for this movie very much either. And it's that kind of thing in which it's like, I wish that it followed through, not just on some neat ideas, but just basics.
My last couple of stray notes here are mostly about like side character stuff and moments I liked, but ultimately I think this movie was more fun to film than it was to watch. I think like the food fight scene must have been an absolute delight. They got lots of crunchy, loud, squishy noises and fun like set piece stuff there. And you know, you have the like iconic ice cream truck and like the dancing on the restaurant table scene. Like, this is a movie that in some way must be fun just for the actors to like have some fun and do a little like simple plot, you know?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Well, tell that to Max Keeble when he was thrown in the mud.
Right.
To the trivia.
The trivia saying like he hated that and it was gross as heck. Yeah.
It was the worst thing in his professional career, I think.
Yeah, and he did the
He said-
voice of
Which-
Hey Arnold at one point.
Yes, he did. Which his career, I think he, unlike so many of the actors in this film, got out of showbiz early enough to focus on school, as I understand it. Like around 06, 07, the guy who plays Max Keeble was like, I'm done acting. And I like to think that maybe it was like this movie was just so good that he was like, I've peaked with Max Keeble's
Not Home Alone 3, huh? Okay.
No, not Home Alone 3.
That's what his
Lost
name's
in
for.
My Home.
I think this is one of those ones where you do get an enjoyment from watching kids have fun. I'm not denying that. There was things like, again, there are things I do enjoy in this movie, but there was just a lot that pissed me the fuck off that I didn't expect. I just walked in being like, oh, it's going to be a kids movie. It's going to be entertaining. It's going to be like hijinks. But there was just like weird sexism. The mild racism towards Little Romeo in that scene was very odd. I don't know why it was there. It felt like a Seth Rogen comedy gag. I don't know why it was in this.
There's
very odd.
A lot of the racism and stuff comes from the principal, like how when he brings the superintendent over, the whole reason he builds a football field is because he was a former football player, and he's like, you like sports, right? That's the thing that you're good at, right? Is sports, because you're the football guy. So I made a football field so that you would like me. Or when he introduces the like Eastern European football players, he doesn't know their names because he's like, it doesn't matter.
By the way,
Because he
they
doesn't
aren't
care
even
to learn
Eastern
people's names.
European, as we find out at the very end as well. There's that gag, if you didn't notice, where one of them speaks with a perfect American accent, and then he's like, oh, and then he puts on a German accent, so it's even
Oh, I didn't catch that.
more
Clever.
Germany's not Eastern Europe, Ryan.
part
That's
of it.
true.
No, you're right. And yeah, so there's little things like that I enjoyed. I really loved when Larry Miller walked past a child and smacked a book out of their hands and said, "This isn't a place for smiling." And that is the shit that I'm talking about. Like, as a kid, I love that. That's the kind of shit, like, when characters that are adults are both immature and extremely mature. And that's what I love. And as a
Yeah.
kid, this is again me, I always love the antagonists in kids' movies. I rarely ever care about protagonists in kids' media, or in media
Sure,
in
yeah.
general. I'm an antagonist
Same.
boy. And I love Larry Miller in this, and I was just like, you should win. Get your football field. Tear up that animal sanctuary that's barely been developed and attacked you, and you should reasonably destroy it. Fuck him.
The two characters who should really win are the kid who is referred to exclusively as Worried Boy, who just every time something happens, he's like, oh, jeez.
What happened to him?
My mom's gonna be mad.
He just went
I love
away.
him. He just vanished. He like briefly at the end is like, "Yeah, you did it." And then the guy who runs the wildlife place, weirdly
Molly?
very handsome dude who's just ripped. And he's like, "What's up, Max?" And he just very clearly explains everything that's wrong with the plot. And he's just like, "Yeah, they're shutting us down. We don't have jobs anymore. What are you gonna do with the animals?" "Well, I don't know, because we're being shut down with a week's notice." "Why?" "That sucks. Anyways, bye, Max Keeble. I'm not in the movie anymore."
he's setting up this whole separate teen movie of like, we got to save the animal shelter,
Yeah.
and raise the money and do a fundraiser, and then he's like, oh, that's not the plot of this
Okay,
one.
I'm gone.
Okay.
I'm gone.
All right.
I didn't.
But in that movie,
See you
Max Keeble saved the animal shelter, and it was referenced by Larry Miller in this film.
Yeah, it's like a side movie.
Yeah, right. That's the problem. Is it's in the Max Keeble expanded universe.
Again, I didn't even
Yeah.
care for that guy, because when you see his animal sanctuary, they're like tiny little cages in this shithole across the road with not even that much of a fence to separate
Yeah,
it.
it can't be legal.
Like-
It can't
Like,
be
I just
legal.
went, oh, screw it. Like, as soon as the monkey escaped and went straight into the school, I was like, no, that animal sanctuary would be shut down without question. It's gone. And I know
No,
it's a
no,
kid's
that was the power of pheromones.
Ah, yes, the power of pheromones, which were... Okay, there was one gag I almost liked, and then they ruined it. Larry Miller has been spraying the pheromones, and you know, cuts to animals and you hear them, but there's this one bit where he's walking, it's a tracking shot, and he sprays it, and you just hear them quietly in the background, and I was like, that's a great gag, and then they immediately cut to the animals at the sanctuary reacting and thrashing, and I was like, no... The noise was good enough. Like, you've already established it. I was like, I was like, oh, that's a really nice gag. Like, there's a little audio gag, like, and then you hear quietly in the background, like, and all these animal noises. I was like, cool. But then they had to show it. I was like, you ruined it. You ruined it, Max.
I was thinking a lot about how pheromones are like a way bigger thing in media than they are in
Like
the
quicksand.
world. It feels like, yeah, like quicksand,
Yeah.
like junkyards, like food fights. They're just, these things are not like real. I don't
Do
know.
you guys not have food fights in your cafeterias?
I've never been in a food fight.
That seems like a terrible, terrible idea.
We don't have cafeterias, or at least I never have. And that's
No,
like an
I've
American
never.
thing. It's like, oh yes, the old school cafeteria in which everyone's sitting there in their little tables of nerds and jocks and.
That certainly is true, but I was never involved in a food fight. No.
Bummer. You can now as a teacher. Come on, just throw food.
I I cut off a food fight before it started once.
Wow.
I heard rumblings of it being planned, and I helped to shut it down. So that's the closest I've come to a food fight.
In Australia, we eat food.
Yeah, we just eat it. No, I've had food fights technically. What food fights here in Australia is maybe a kid will throw like a banana peel or like an orange at you from a distance, and then you look at them and go, "What did you fucking do?" And then they go, "Fuck," and then just run away, and that's it. Like, you don't
Yeah,
get
we
into
throw
a-
words.
You throw things, or like what we did now. One of my favorite things was you get into a group of people who aren't paying attention, and you have your juice box, or as I called them in New South Wales, the state I'm from, poppers, because here's the reason. You have an empty juice box, you blow it up, you put air in it, put it on the ground, and just stomp on it, and it just pops, and it scares everyone.
There you go.
So,
Or you do the bottle. I used to do the water bottle thing where you twist the top of a water bottle almost until it opens, and then you twist the bottle itself until it's like very tight, and then you snap the bottle and it like shoots out like a rocket.
Yeah, we did that too.
That's fun to do. We used to get in trouble for that in high school.
Oh,
Actually, a lot.
you get in trouble for anything if you get caught, like an idiot. So,
You're saying I should have done it from under the table. I understand.
like,
My last.
go on.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you go.
No, I have a wrap up question.
Yes.
Well, my wrap up question is this. So, Jenna in this film, every time she walks on screen, is preceded by the first couple of notes of "Hit Me, Baby, One More Time" by Britney Spears. If you, and this is a question for the whole cast, could be preceded when you walk into a room by any, like the first couple of notes of any song, what would it be?
Bartek, you're a big music guy. That's a good question. I would think something David Bowie-esque. Maybe Ziggy Stardust. That's a good one.
Just the beginning of Let's Dance, or like just the chorus of Let's Dance?
Like in Zoolander when David Bowie actually appears and his name pops on screen and they just have "Let's Dance" and then it cuts immediately. Yeah,
Exactly.
like that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Mine would be Australia by the Shins, because they would evoke that specific like sadness and nostalgia out of some people, but then everyone else would be trying to hear the lyrics of like "Born to Multiply." Oh, what? All you want, and then it's just be specifically the "All you want's one more Saturday," and I'm just walking in to that line.
So Magellan, which
that's
Bare
me.
Naked Ladies song is it?
Oh, you knew.
Roasted,
You
roasted
knew.
like chickpeas.
I'm actually sitting over here trying to decide which Bare Naked Lady song. I think it'd be "Pinch Me." I think that's the one.
I don't know Bare Naked
Yeah.
Ladies, so you can say whatever that title is.
Check it out. That's sort of a sad one. The music video is fun because he like works at a Burger King or something.
Bartek, not at a good burger. Bummer.
For me, it would be generic Polish folk music, so that when people see me, they'll think that I'm just a wacky gag character. He's just gonna make everyone laugh, but really I'm scheming in my head so that I can surprise everyone.
So let's get up to wrap up thoughts. Any further notes or things that people want to discuss about Max Keeble's big move?
Just that there's so much music in this movie that we didn't even get a brief moment to talk about McGoogles.
Oh, it's because I didn't
and
like
how
any
purely
of it.
just it got stuck in my head for a while. It always does. I've like in the interim since the last time I saw this movie gotten that song stuck in my head. McGoogles. It's not even a good Irish accent, and if you listen to the credits, they do the full version of it with nothing, no backing.
I heard it.
And
yeah.
you can just you can hear that guy phoning in the accent. It's really bad.
The credits also has a remix of "Bust a Move" with Max Keeble related
Yeah,
lyrics.
yeah.
It's true. Little Romeo was singing Max Keeble lyrics. That's true.
Oh, was it Little Romeo? I actually thought it was Max.
Mm-mm. I'm 90% sure it was Little Romeo. I remember what he sounds
Oh,
like.
there is
yeah.
the one thing I want to bring up, which Bartek, you asked if this film was from 2001. On the IMDb trivia, it tells us exactly what date the film takes place, and it ends
Tell
on
us. I love
the
this.
7th of September. I would have, in 2001,
My God.
I really would have
Yeah.
liked to have seen, I don't know, a
Oh
week
my
later in this
God.
universe. You know,
Guess we're not moving to Chicago anymore, you guys.
a week later in this universe, where they're celebrating my dad's birthday, which is September 11. They're like, oh, Ryan's dad had a birthday. Also, something else happened. But, yeah, Ryan's dad. Yeah, Bartek, how do you feel about that? Again, 9/11 is embroiled in media that we have covered. Because we've had
I
few
just
movies
don't
that have been
think-
affected by 9/11.
I don't think comedy would have been appropriate for that time, Ryan.
Oh, as Roger Ebert said about Zoolander coming out. Yes, the famous Roger Ebert critique of Zoolander was, how dare Ben Stiller release a comedy film in a time of crisis like this?
Nice.
What was he supposed to?
Got
what was he
him.
supposed to do?
Never release anything.
Like, fuck.
Also, that was probably made like a year at least, if not.
No, that's
2
what I mean.
years
Like, it's
beforehand,
films
come
all
on.
made beforehand, and you have to release things.
Right.
But I always think about that. And Bartek and I make fun of Roger Ebert a lot on this show because I think he was wrong about a lot of things.
On
Yeah.
Unappreciated Masterpieces, he was our sitcom arch nemesis.
Yeah, Bartek would do his impression of him, and he'll be like, "Screw you, kids! Baby's Day Out sucks," and something like that. Any other final thoughts, Bartek? Anything from you?
I think we generally covered it. I didn't have as many problems with the Jenna character as you guys did. I reckon, and this does reduce the character in a way, but I think she was meant to serve as a device in the sense that, she was a shadow that Max was chasing, so all the sexualizations, like, from his perspective, and in the end he discovers that, oh, she wasn't what she looked like, but again,
Yeah.
it wasn't that big of a thing. Other than that, yeah, again, don't hate the film, but I think it's lower tier in terms of, these kind of Munez era films for me.
Yeah. Magellan, any
Yeah.
final things from you? Notes or thoughts?
I don't know. I think this is still, to me, a film that would be fun to like have a group of people watch, and everybody has to produce they have to really work to produce some sort of critical essay on it that takes a different approach. I would just enjoy that.
Yeah.
Exercise.
As a teacher, you enjoy that.
What's
Yeah.
kind of the what's kind of the ethics class approach of can anarchy function in
Should we-
the
should we
society of
scrap-
selfish sociopaths?
Should we scrap this episode and just do an Unappreciated Masterpieces, Ryan?
Oh yeah. So people, get your copy of Max lined up. 3, 2, 1, play. So guys, feminist masterpiece? No, but Marxist masterpiece,
Yeah.
because if you add a letter to Max, you have Marx. Marx big
There
move.
is that Marxist moment where he is talking with his dad, and his dad's like, hey, sometimes when you're an adult you have to do what people with power tell you to do, and Max is like, no dad, if you seize the means of production and rise or whatever, like he almost goes into a full
And then his
thing.
dad does that, and we're just told a guy in his 40s will start his own advertising business with no clients, and he'll be fine. Good
Yeah.
luck, Dad from Liz
Um,
McGuire.
His dad definitely was not in advertising, by the way. He's telling all of them that he's like a VP of marketing or
Yeah.
something. That's
The fact that he can just leave that job and be like, I guess I didn't want to work there. I want to work for myself. It's like, you weren't doing
He might
it.
have been a furry. He did wear a lot of fur outfits and animal
yep,
outfits,
yep,
and
yep,
maybe
yep.
this was him
Yeah,
justifying
he
it.
might have been independently wealthy, and he just was pretending to have a job.
I think his job was full-time furry. I think that was his employment. And then,
Okay.
the boss was like,
Chicago was a meetup.
and his boss was like, you're dressing as cheese, and he's like, where does this fall into the furry, huh? The cheese?
Well, the boss is the mouse, I guess. in that.
Mickey? Yeah. Mickey Mouse is the boss. You're gonna do what I tell
Yeah.
you.
No, the saddest
and then
saddest thing about his character, sorry, briefly, is not only that the wife knows that like pulling a whatever Schmorgendorf, the name of his boss, is a thing, where it's like, oh, yep, he fucked with my husband's wife life yet again. That's a thing in his life, and that they're all used to, and that's really depressing. Also, the part where he's trying to defend the fact that he wears suits by saying like, honey, there's a lot of junior advertising executives who wish they could be doing what I'm doing. And it's like, dude, no, they don't. You're not real.
Oh, yeah.
That's not what they're thinking about.
Go.
The last thing I'll say is that Max Keeble's big move taught a generation of kids the phrase plausible deniability, but didn't fully teach them what it means.
Just it sounds cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And I really like the scene where the teacher was like, name some verbs, and his friends were like, betrayal,
to stab in
lie.
the back.
That's a phrase.
Yeah. Manipulate.
That was good.
That was.
I enjoyed Larry Miller presenting at the school assembly the football thing, and like you said, the Sub-Zero, and it made me think.
Yeah, that
it
was
made
good.
me instantly think of Malcolm in the Middle, and one of my favorite gags in Malcolm in the Middle is like Reese, who's in this movie as well, the journalist, being like, I defeated. Is it Mortal Kombat? Mortal Kombat, and nobody believes me. And Hal, the dad, just turns around and goes, yeah, it's absurd. No one can defeat Sub-Zero. And I just instantly thought of that. Yeah, I don't have much more. I didn't comment on the music because I was never a fan. I have my parents' taste in music, like I said, David Bowie, older type music. So this music didn't really do anything for me. I kind of wish that there was the music was like, it felt like you're, switching through the radio. And I kind of wish that there was a few more implementations like the Britney Spears song that actually mattered to what was happening on the screen or added some comedic effect. I just felt like, we just have a bunch of songs from this time that are popular.
You didn't like when Max was bathing in the sprinklers and they had a song going, "Hey baby."
Yeah, what was that?
That song's in the Shark Tale video game.
Yeah.
What?
Oh my God.
Bartek, I'm learning a
What
lot
a
about
pull.
you, bud.
Well,
crap, that's
if you listen to
awesome.
the pod on that episode of Shark Tale, you would know that Bartek has played Shark Tale the game, and his brother apparently has not. And then when his brother found out about this, he was like, "What are you talking about? Of course I have."
That's
I don't think
It's
there's
because my brother's name's Oscar.
like the fish. Anything else? I think that's about it. Max Keeble's big move was the big ideological smackdown that we needed to have since Falling Down. Who would have guessed, huh?
I think both of them are failed deconstructions of the white male ego.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
But
That's my take. I think they're a double feature.
but in which order?
Yeah, that's up to you.
Yeah, I don't know. You can cut back and forth.
Oh,
between them.
the machete cut it? Like, just blend them together in the same film. So when Michael Douglas is shooting up a burger place, you just cut to Max Keeble being like, "Oh, here we go again."
And every time it cuts to
Yeah,
Max
yeah,
Keeble,
exactly.
it has like cartoonish sound effects.
No, yeah. No, yeah. In Falling Down, there's all the cartoony sound effects, like when they were jumping on the tables and they had like the womp 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 noise to match their footsteps. Yeah. Max Keeble's big move. That's about it. Bartek, next episode is a film of your recommendation. What are you hitting us with? It's got to be a foreign film, if I'm not mistaken, because you have a code of ethics.
Yes, although to be fair, when I pick an American film, it's also foreign to us. But I pick non-American films every second time. And I want to go back to Japan, Ryan.
Yay.
We're going to do the film Wolf Children.
Is that a live action or an animated?
It's an anime.
Is it a good one?
It's a Mamoru Hosoda movie.
That's nailing it down. All right.
He worked on the Digimon movie.
Oh, Digimon. That was quality. Oh boy, Digimon, Digital Monsters.
Yeah.
All right,
yeah,
Bartek. So what year is that from again?
Oh man, what year was it from? I think it's early 2000s somewhere
So-
thereabouts.
It is. It's 2012.
2012.
Wolf
I thought it was
Children.
20, early 2000s, 2012.
the year the world ended.
Early 2010.
Early 2010s. Yeah, so we'll be doing that next episode. So listening people, make sure to check that out. I don't know where one can source it, but I imagine one can have a copy easily available. Subs, Bartek, I imagine?
Yes, original Japanese audio.
Absolutely.
Yep. Well, sometimes we have to clarify because sometimes we watch things specifically for the dubs, like Story of Ricky. So
Right.
subs, Bartek, thank you very much for the recommendation. I shall have to hunt it down. Hopefully it won't be as hard as Max Keeble, in which I had to sign up for Disney Plus and look at the lack of things on Disney Plus and be very annoyed.
Yeah, but they didn't cut out 20 minutes.
Yes. That's about it. So Chatz, tell us a little bit more about your show and where we can find you on the web.
Megan, that's all you.
Okay, sure. Yeah, you can find us a number of different places. So the main place is wherever you listen to podcasts. You can search Chatz, a television podcast. You can also find us over at chatspod.simplecast.fm. That's where we're hosted. If you want to follow us on Twitter, that's at chatspod. All of that is spelled CHATZPOD because it's a sort of cool.
Yeah, not to
Cool
get
way
them
to spell
confused
it.
with the Australian punk band Chatz, spelt with an S. Not to get them confused with them.
Yeah, or the coffee chain spelled with
We
a
don't have
Z.
that. So.
Yeah, we don't have it either, but it exists. And then we also have a Patreon. If you liked us and you listen to us and you like us some more and you want to hear us do movie commentaries or other conversations besides watching a TV show, you can check us out at patreon.com/chatspod.
Yeah.
So number of different ways. But right now we're watching The Prisoner. It's a short, sweet experience. We're only a few episodes in, so it'd be pretty easy to catch up with us and finish out the show with us.
Yeah, and on your Patreon, you do commentaries like we used to do. And Bartek, they've had some overlap. They did Kangaroo Jack.
Ooh, I think Little
Yes,
Bow Wow
we
did the
did. It
credit
was-
song in that
it was
too.
wonderful.
Little Bow Wow did a credit song in that, and it was very amusing.
Sorry, not Little Bow Wow, Little Romeo.
Okay, yeah. One of the interesting things with you guys, though, it seems like if you haven't seen the movie before, you just kind of watch it for the first time while you're doing commentary. We did it more like we watched it beforehand and it had thoughts, critiques, so there's a bit of a difference there. It was so amusing to me listening to Kangaroo Jack
Mhm.
and you guys at the beginning of it being like, oh, it's going to do all these cliched things, and then it didn't do that, and at the end, both of you begrudgingly being like, it didn't do those things that we thought it was going to do and be stupid. It was a little bit more clever than we expected. Dang it.
Isn't that the Chatz experience, though? Isn't that what you pay for?
That's
the
what we all
beauty of
pay
it.
for. For us listening people, same kind of deal on all the podcatchers available. You can find us. Feel free to rate and review us on whatever ones allows it, because vanity. We are on Twitter and Facebook. You just look up Spit and Polish Presents. You can find us pretty easy. We're always posting things on there, questions, links to things, further kind of conversations on what we've discussed on episodes that just didn't make it into the cut, and general stuff like that. So you can always find us there, communicate with us on there. Our email is spitandpolished@gmail.com. So if you want to email through your own views on movies that we've talked about, maybe you're Max Keeble himself and you're like, how dare you discuss me like that, Ryan? Or you have
And he
suggestions.
burns a bridge with
Yeah,
you.
or you have suggestions for movies that we can cover down the line, because this was, listening people's choice. So we will cover future movies down the line of your suggestions if you actually put them through and suggest them. Because, hey, if you don't, then we don't know. You might be sitting there going, so when are they going to get around to doing this movie? And we may never do it because
gotta let
you
'em
never
know.
suggested.
Yep. Everything goes on the list.
Everything goes on the list.
Everything. Go.
So thank you, Magellan and Allen, for joining us for the smackdown of a lifetime of Max Keeble. I think I was the bully to Max. He never fucking recovered from my smackdown.
That's right. That's why you didn't want to talk about the song in the film.
Yes.
The mascot.
Oh boy, Bartek, you must have been very happy to see Jamie Kennedy playing the Ice Cream Man, because you're a big Jamie Kennedy fan.
I only know him from the Heckler documentary.
Can you please tell Allen and Magellan a little bit, and our listeners, about your relationship with Jamie Kennedy before we fully wrap out?
So it's literally just this Heckler documentary that I watched. So there's a documentary called Heckler, which is about, it starts off being about stand-up comedians talking about, the act of heckling and their experiences with hecklers and audiences, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's on topic for 1/3 of it. Then at the 1/3 point, they shift to a sort of related topic, just like internet trolling, and you can kind of see the connections there. It's slight relevance, but it's completely lost the whole heckler analogy. And then the last third is following Jamie Kennedy being really upset about the fact that nobody liked Son of the Mask.
Yep.
And he goes
Yep.
around to all these reviewers
God.
talking about
What?
how, so why didn't you like Son of the Mask? Why did you write this bad review? Why did you troll me? It's like, because it was a bad movie, and that's basically the whole last third of the film. Him basically saying, why did you write a bad review about this movie? And then being like, because it was a bad movie. And then at the very end, he burns some stuff and walks away with 2 overweight women.
2 overweight women in lingerie for no reason. And
Wow,
and
cool.
that
I
oh
gotta
yeah,
watch it.
do you?
It's on YouTube in 6 parts.
Okay.
So thank you guys, thank you Bartek. See you next week, Bartek, and listening people. As always, oh yes, thank you Bartek. As always, listening people, remember to be kind to each other, because if you do burn your bridges, your parents aren't going to move. They're just going to stay where they are, and you're going to have to suffer the consequences, okay? And then you're going to give a big old lecture about, hey, we shouldn't become like the bullies, and then immediately act like the bullies would by throwing them in the trash, like the bullies did earlier in the film, thus undercutting the whole entire speech you gave. But, hey, that's the world.
Well, you know, Ryan, I wasn't trying to be like the bullies. In fact, I came to this episode wearing a robe, but then you had that whole thing about how apparently wearing a robe isn't a joke. So, okay, sure.
Now I'm just
fine.
nude on the podcast.
We're all nude. So, thank you very much, everyone. And if you want to have a scary time, look up Orlando Brown's YouTube channel, in which he makes scary
don't
videos,
do that.
and he's scary.
Oh God.
Enjoy.
No, it's all.
Bye.
Come here, let me tickle your pussy.